So thank you very much to the, thank you. And thanks to the organizers for inviting me to give a talk here. Slightly less thanks to Lufthansa for losing my luggage on the way down. But hopefully it will arrive. So I'm going to talk about stellar archaeology with the Nordic Optical Telescope. And I'm going to talk about two projects that I've done. One involving very much the knot, and the next one less so, since I've been away from the knot for some years. And then I'll talk a little bit about the role that I think the knot can play in the future with large spectroscopic surveys. But before we get, or doesn't work. We need this thing. Okay, there you go. Okay, there you go. So before we get too much into details, let's just do a brief overview of what I mean when I say stellar archaeology. So basically, stellar archaeology is the use of abundances from old Mel-Poor stars to probe nucleosynthesis events that happened in the early universe. So you have some sort of nuclear synthesis event that enriched the interstellar medium, and then you form a low-mass star, which live on, and you can observe it today. And you point your favorite telescope at it, and I'm sorry that this is not the knot. I should update my slides. And then you take a spectrum, and you find absorption lines like this one, for instance, which is a europium line. And you say, great, then I can get a europium abundance. And then in principle, this europium abundance will tell you how much europium was created in this nucleosynthesis event. So that's sort of the basic overview of stellar archaeology, or the idea of stellar archaeology. So these plots are horrible, I'm sorry about that. But basically, when people started looking at these old Mel-Poor stars and deriving abundances for them, they found, they found lots of things, but they found two things which I'm interested in. And what I've tried to plot here is the carbon abundance as function of melicity in one side, and then the europium abundance as function of melicity on the other side. And when you go down to very low melicity and sort of very old stars, probably early universe, you found these extremely carbon-enhanced stars. And also on the other side, if you measure europium in a lot of Mel-Poor stars, you'll find these stars that are extremely enhanced in europium. So the question is this actually true? Does this actually probe nucleosynthesis events in the early universe? Or is this just the result of mass transfer from a binary? So before we actually go and tell the supernova modelers to create models that can create these unusual abundance pattern, we need to check if these stars are binaries and actually just received some mass from a binary companion. So that is what Johannes did. Johannes was my master thesis supervisor. And he said, okay, well, we have all of these carbon-enhanced Mel-Poor stars, these CEMP stars, and we have all these stars that are enhanced in europium. Basically, they're enhanced in all elements, heavy elements produced in the rapid neutron-capture process. So these are process-enhanced stars. And we need to figure out whether they're binaries or not. So we need to get their radial velocities, and we need to monitor these to see if they vary over a period of years. And Johannes and Birgitta also started this project in 2000, I think 2007. They had the first observing night, and then basically the project went on till January 2016, and we got data was taken on 180 nights with FIES, high resolution low signal noise spectra of these stars. I joined the project in 2010 when I was a master's student and got presented with all this lovely data that I could play with. And then this project sort of carried into my PhD and has basically followed me ever since. But we monitored 64 stars with varying brightness. Some of them were very bright, some of them was fairly faint. We got spectra of at least two spectra of each star. Some of them a lot more spectra, so up to 34 spectra. The spectra has an average signal noise of about 10. It varies a little bit depending on the brightness of the star. But basically, we collected over 900 spectra of this sample of stars in this 10-year period. And we determined the radial velocities with cross-correlation. And have accuracies on our radial velocities from like 100 meters per second to 1 kilometers per second, depending again on the signal noise. And we were able to determine the binary status for all of these stars and also compute orbits. So we had multiple measurements for some of the binary systems, and up to 23 of the binary systems we computed orbits. So let me just show you some of the more sort of star-specific results. So it turns out that carbon-enhanced metal-poor stars, they can broadly be separated into two different groups. One of the groups also has a lot of enrichment in what we call S-process elements, so stuff like barium. These are what we call CEMP-s stars. And from our radial velocity monitoring program, we found out that 82% of these were found in binary systems. These are just some of the very nice orbits that we computed for these stars. Most of them had periods about a year, a little bit higher, very nice circular orbits, but we also found these like this one over here, which has a period of over 10,000 days and a very eccentric orbit. And these are all radial velocity measurements made with the knot, FIES and knot in this period. But this very high binary frequency tells us that the chemically peculiar pattern of these stars is probably not due to a supernova that went off in the early universe. It's probably due to transfer from an evolved companion that has gone through an asteroid giant branch phase and produced a lot of carbon, a lot of S-process elements, which has then been transferred onto a star. This is still interesting. It just tells us that these stars are not the best stars to probe the nucleosynthesis of the very first supernova that went off in the universe. However, there's the other type of CEMP stars show no enrichment in neutron-capture elements, or they show normal enrichment. These are the ones we call CEMP-no stars. And here we found a binary frequency of only 17%, which is comparable to binary frequencies of normal metal-poor stars. One of them, this BD44 something, was actually, so the blue dots here are our measurements. But this has been followed for a very long time. This is the 30-year baseline. The radial velocity of this star has been stable for the last 30 years, which is pretty impressive. The shaded area you see here is the 1 sigma and 2 sigma around the mean radial velocity for this star. A few of them were also in binary systems, and we computed nice orbits for them. But the fact that we only find this, that we find this fairly low binary frequency tells us that these stars, the abundance patterns that we measure or derive in these stars, is actually directly relatable to the nucleosynthesis output of the very first stars that exploded in the universe. So these are real second-generation stars that we can use to probe the first-generation stars. Now, the third group of stars that we monitored were these R-process-enhanced stars. And similarly to the CEMP-no stars, we also found a fairly low binary frequency of these. So these two over here are two of the most famous R-process-enhanced star nodes. The top one here is the first one found. And the one down here is the one that had the first uranium line measured in the spectrum. So that's very, very famous. But both very stable radial velocities. They don't vary at all over the period that we monitored them. However, we also did find one, which is actually also a star with uranium in its spectrum, which has a period of about 300 days. And as you can see, on the y-axis here, the amplitude of this system is very low, but we were actually able to get precise enough measurements to determine this orbit. However, as I said, the binary frequency is low, so the nucleosynthesis, or the abundance pattern of these stars has to be due to nucleosynthesis in the early universe before the low-mass star was formed. This puts me very nicely onto the next campaign, which is to figure out where does these stars come from, and what's the nucleosynthesis site of the R process that results in these R process enhanced stars to be formed. And you probably also all heard about the neutron merger that happened in 2017, which gave us this beautiful light curve powered by lanthanide-rich material, and finally gave us a site for the R process. We could finally observe a site for the R process. Unfortunately, that's not the full answer, and I'm happy to discuss more about that if you have questions. But basically, there are lots of other possible sites for this rapid neutron capture process to occur, and we don't really know which of these. So this one has been observed, the other ones have not been observed. Well, core collapse supernova have been observed, but not in relation to the R process. collapsars and jet supernovae have not really been observed, but they may be active in the early universe. So we kind of want to figure out what's the deal here, what's the picture here of producing these very heavy elements in the early universe. And that leads on to the second observational campaign. Oh, sorry. So how do we actually do this? So how would we how do we investigate the R process? Well, the abundance pattern that we observe in Mel-Poor stars, and also the light curves that we get for events like the neutron star merger, is obviously a combination of the astrophysical site, so the physical conditions of the site, and then the nuclear properties of the elements being created. This is what we don't know. This one is actually, there's a new experiment called FRIP at Michigan University, I think, or Michigan State. I've always mixed up those two. But which will push the measurement of half-lives, cross-sections, decay rates, stuff like that, masses, into the unstable territory where the R process operates, not all the way out, because the R process operates very far from stability, but it pushes the boundary a little bit. So we'll get new measurements for this. This one, kilonova light curves, well, we have one. I don't know when we think we'll get the next one, but maybe, hopefully soon. But what we can do is stellar abundances. So what you see down here is the absolute abundances as a function of atomic number for one of these R process enhanced stars. And all the magenta points in this plot are measured. The solid line is the solar R process abundance pattern. But we need more of these to get some more information. And this is where the R process alliance comes in, which is a group of stellar spectroscopists, including me, who some years ago said, okay, well, let's find more of these R process enhanced stars. Before we started looking, we knew about 50 of them. But we started an extensive observational campaign to find more of them. And, well, oh, I didn't update that, sorry. Well, Nanot just joined this campaign last month with 11 stars. But basically what we did was we found bright, Mel-Poor, relatively cold stars to go and get what we call snapshot spectra of, which are a resolution of 30,000 and 6 floors of 30 around the europium line, so that we can get a europium detection. And this we can do, our stars are bright, so they're brighter than B magnitude of 12-ish. And this we can do on these 2.5 meter telescopes. So we have the DuPont, which we spend a lot of time on. I spend a lot of time on the McDonald telescope. And then the Nanot joined the group last month, as I said. So basically this kind of survey it requires a lot of time, because it's only about 3% of the stars that we observed that actually have the signature that we're looking for. So we need to observe a lot of stars, which means we need a lot of nights, but that we're actually able to get on these 2.5 meter telescopes, because not a lot of other people use them for stellar observations. So we've done this for 6 years now, and we've observed about 2,000 stars in total. We've analyzed about 600 of them, and this is the result of that analysis. This is the europium of Orion and metallicity on the x-axis. And you can see all the red points up here, also the faded ones, that's just different data release papers. They are all new, highly R process enhanced stars that we have found, where we can derive a full R process abundance pattern from these stars. So we found 72 new ones, so we basically doubled the sample. We also found a lot of what we call R1 stars, which are just less enhanced in europium. And then we found 42 of these, what we call limited R stars. And basically those are stars with low europium abundances, and this is not shown in the plot, but high abundances of strontium, because we want to investigate both the really heavy regions, so both the lanthanide region, but also the more light R process region. Yeah, so that's going really well. We need to analyze all of our stars and need to sort of make status and figure out where we are and what we're going to do. But that will happen within the next couple of years, so there should be a lot of results coming out. Another thing I will say is I pointed out this one saying we probably won't get that many kilonova observations, but perhaps with the Transit Explorer at the NOT, there might be some contributions from there exotic supernovae, neutron star mergers, that at least will give us some statistics of how many of these events actually happen, and that we can then transfer onto our stellar abundances and say, okay, well, does this match up with what we see in the stars? In my last couple of slides, I'll just say a little bit about what I think, or what I would like to use the NOT for in the future, basically in the era of Gaia and large spectroscopic surveys like the foremost. So a lot of these R-process enhanced stars that we find, and probably also a lot of the carbon enhanced stars that we find in the Milky Way halo, we believe are accreted from satellite systems. So basically, the three panels up here shows you sort of the process. You have the satellites being detached from the Milky Way, and then they come a little bit too close, and they form stellar streams. And then after some time, they're fully incorporated into the Milky Way. However, they still remember where they came from. And when we have Gaia, we can actually measure the kinematics of these stars, so we can map the kinematics of these stars, so we can pair them up and say, okay, well, all the blue stars, they all came from system A, and all the green stars came from system B. And so when we have this information from Gaia, then we can take telescopes like the NOT with FIES and say, okay, well, we know the abundance of this guy. Well, then let's get abundances of all these other guys as well, and then we can actually characterize these building blocks that fall into the Milky Way and better characterize the chemical buildup of the Milky Way halo and the nucleosynthesis processes that might have enriched these systems in the first place. This is something that we're definitely going to do with the RPA data, and hopefully also beyond that. The other thing is, well, we have foremost coming very soon, hopefully. And they have a high-resolution survey, which is going to target L4 stars in the Milky Way. They promise to observe 1 million stars with magnitudes between 12 and 14.5. That's bright enough to do abundance analysis with FIES. 13,000 of them is supposed to be less than -2. That's really great. They'll measure, or they say they'll measure 20 elements. This includes some neutron-capture elements, but they definitely will not get the full abundance patterns from strontium and all the way up to uranium that we need to characterize something like the R process. So this is where foremost we'll find the stars, and then we'll go with the NOT and say, okay, well then let's get better and more high resolution, more high signal to noise data of these stars so we can do a full detailed analysis of these stars. And this is basically my summary. So I carried out in companion with Vita and Johannes. So I wasn't actually a student at the NOT, but I was kind of, because I was the student of the NOT director. Also think that got me a little bit extra observing time than we probably should have had. But we carried out this campaign, which established the binary nature of some of the chemically peculiar stars in the early universe. I've started this new observing campaign with the R process lines, which we're very well into. Hopefully that will give us more information about the R process in combination with instruments like the NT. And then there's definitely opportunities for exploring dynamically tied groups discovered in the Gaia data and also discovered in foremost with telescopes like the NOT and spectrograph like FIES. And I'd just like to say here at the end, so I've been away from Europe for 6 years. I've been in the US and I've observed with several sort of similar sized telescopes in the US. But the user-friendliness of the NOT and the information that the webpage provides, that the staff provides, just the whole experience of coming back and using the NOT is just, it's really great compared to other places. So you should applaud yourself for that. And thank you.